Morgan,
Oh, that was really loud.
Morgan
You
Freeman.
replaced Morgan Freeman.
And
Let's check the volume here. Okay. So I think merging. It's so yeah. So let's we're not gonna start until 10 and it's 9:57. This whole electronic hybridiverse makes us be so much more precise with these things. But just picking up on where we are, because I feel like it's been a long time since we met.
Yeah. And this one wasn't advertised.
This one wasn't advertised.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Really?
It's-
The upper right? I didn't see it.
It's hard to get the word out about things, given the
changes.
the schedule is, it's not necessarily every Sunday and
Because originally it said
that.
Yeah, because it
Right.
said at first,
Yeah.
and every Sunday.
It's,
And those
yeah,
of us here, we knew it was today also.
right.
But so I was just kind of curious.
No, it's a perennial challenge, and yesterday,
So many holidays.
we announced it as Shabbat services, but there was a conversation I was part of a couple days ago, I can't quite, pretty recently, about the winter concert. And we obviously tried to promote the winter concert so much, and people still are like, you had a winter concert? I never heard about that. So it's like, just that is kind of the extreme example, but it's and the electronic everything averse, it's so hard to communicate and be heard, which is just kind of, I don't know, I'm sure that was no one's intention, but here we are.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning, hello.
Check on the necessary question.
Yeah.
Answer is not great.
Yeah.
Because it's theoretically possible, but if you're going to do it, besides paying a fee, you have to apply for the event for 60 days.
Oh.
So we've already crossed that threshold.
Yeah, we have.
We don't
But it's something that we didn't mention next time because if there are programs.
Oh yes, so I was going to talk about the books. So this is a class about the Book of Genesis. We have it's probably good to at least be able to share one of these with someone, but the reason why we have other translations around the table, well, other books around the table, is because they contain different translations, which always enhances our study. So if you have a Eitz Chaim, this one, then you have the translation and the commentary that I'll be referring to, which is not necessary because we will be doing that as a group as well. If you have the JPS Tanakh, it's the same translation, but not the commentaries. And if you have the Stone Chumash or Tanakh, it's a different translation and different commentaries. Oh yeah, and this one, the Jerusalem Bible, classic. I think the translation is from 1917, which is awesome.
wow.
Totally great.
Yeah.
It's the same text, which is good. And so that's another great resource. So we love the, oh yeah, and now it's 10. So we are recording the class right now, so we can post it for those who want to learn asynchronously. I'll turn on the big screen if we have people joining via Zoom, but I'll leave it like this until that happens. So hi and welcome. What's happening? So welcome back to Sefer Bereshit, the Book of Genesis. So, oh, here we go. Arnie's showing up. Arnie's joining, so we'll turn this on. Great. So we are over halfway through our learning, which is exciting. We started in January. We're going to be concluding before Memorial Day weekend, which means that we have 5 more sessions, including today. Oh, hello. So hello ourselves. So you know the screen, it's great. So today the way that it has been working out since March 10th is that we're aiming to go through one parsha every session. So we're doing some overview, some in-depth. It's really a combo. And so today let's start on page 198 of the Eitz Chaim, the beginning of Parshat Vayishlach, also known as Genesis chapter 32 verse 4. Genesis chapter 32 verse 4. And so what this parsha is really all about, the Eitz Chaim identifies 4 main sections, and I think that's always nice to look at just to kind of start with an overview. We have, so last we picking up from last time on the story, Jacob had left his father-in-law Lavan with his 2 wives and their 2 handmaids, so 4 mothers of the 12 13, sorry, 12 sons and 1 daughter of Jacob. And so Jacob has taken all of his household, this enormous household, and is going back to the place where he was born to reunite with his twin brother. The last they saw each other, the twin brother Esau wanted to kill Jacob. So it was not a like, you know, like warm embrace and I'll see you later. It was like, I'm playing with my life. And so he's kind of like tentatively going back, and that's kind of setting the scene. So the first section of the parasha, we have Jacob and Esau, the 2 twins, being reunited. Afterwards, we have the rape of Dinah, which is always a difficult thing to read about. And then we have something that the Eitz Chaim calls the Bethel tradition. This is basically the second time the Torah records that Jacob gets the name Israel, which is always very exciting. People of Israel. And then the parsha closes with the line of Esau, kind of preparing us for the next parsha to start talking about Joseph. Okay, are we ready to start? Yay! Okay, so I think this is the part that I want to focus on. So page 198, chapter 32, verse 4. Jacob sends messengers ahead because he's getting ready to reunite with his twin brother Esau. He's greatly frightened, verse 8. In his anxiety, he divides all his household into 2 camps. And then, okay, so now, right after that, chapter 32, verse 10, then Jacob said, "Oh God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, you said to me, return to your native land and I will deal bountifully with you. I am unworthy of the kindness that you have so steadfastly shown your servant. With my staff alone, I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps." So this is kind of cool. So he does flee his twin brother and leave his mother and father years ago, but now he has all of this huge household. He's a very wealthy and successful person, and so he's appealing to God to protect him. So here we go. Let's skip ahead to Genesis chapter 32, verse 23. Okay. And the Eitz Chaim titles this subsection, "The Mysterious Assailant." This is chapter 32, verses 23 through 33. Okay. That same night, Jacob arose, and taking his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children. Why did he have 11 children? That's interesting.
Wait, where are you?
Chapter 32, verse 23. Page 200 to 201 in the Eitz Chaim. So it's correct that Benjamin isn't born yet, but Dinah is born. Maybe by 11 children they mean 11 sons. That's what I can figure that one out.
Right.
So they never count the women.
Unless they do, but not usually. So after taking them across the stream, he sent across all his possessions. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he wrenched Jacob's hips at his socket, so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." But he answered, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Said the other, "What is your name?" He replied, "Jacob." Said he, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with beings divine and human and have prevailed." Jacob asked, "Pray tell me your name." But he said, "You must not ask my name," and he took leave of him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, meaning, "I have seen the divine being face to face, yet my life has been preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping on his hip. That is why the children of Israel to this day, which is true, do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the socket of the hip, since Jacob's hip socket was wrenched at the thigh muscle.
But I hear that Sephardim do eat that cut.
They could eat leg of lamb.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is why we go to page 202 at the bottom. The Halacha L'Maaseh commentary in the gray box, which I like to call the gray box commentary. So just to review, because the Eitz Chaim is such a rich resource, we have 3 commentaries in Eitz Chaim. Technical terms, of course, I'm joking here. The above the line commentary, the below the line commentary, and the gray box commentary. And page 202 is a great example of all of these commentaries. There are technical terms. What do they call them in the? I have to look this up. I forget I don't want to get this wrong. Hold on. Key features of this book. Okay, yeah, they call the above the line commentary the Pshat commentary. I don't know if I would call it that. They call it pshat because pshat means the simple meaning, the straightforward meaning. I would call this the historical critical commentary because it's informed by archaeology, history, literary analysis, and other academic disciplines. So the above the line commentary is essentially the academic commentary. They call the below the line commentary the drosh commentary. I'd call that I think that's a fair characterization. Drosh or midrash, I'm reading from the introduction in Eitz Chaim here, is a traditional non-literal way of reading sacred texts. So we could maybe a nickname for the below the line commentary would be the interpretive commentary. So we have the academic commentary, the creative interpretive commentary, and then the gray box commentary, halacha lema'aseh. This is I love this because this commentary is really in the tradition of my rabbi, Elliot Dorff. He is like the most senior rabbi that I go to with halakhic questions. Aaron Alexander is another person who I go to, but Elliot Dorff is really the top of the chain of hierarchy here. And so it's really in his tradition, West Coast conservative Judaism, West Coast, Best Coast, what can I say? But this is how the Torah relates to things we actually do. So, halakha lema'aseh, Eitz Chaim, page 202 at the very bottom, the gray box. This biblical verse underlies the requirement in kosher slaughter that the sciatic nerve be extracted. So the sciatic nerve, that's the problematic part. Where the cost of removing the nerve is considered prohibitive, the entire hind quarter of the animal is considered unfit for consumption by Jews. So this is the thing. So we have some traditions that are like, let's carefully extract the sciatic nerve. Not that I know that much about how to extract the sciatic nerve from an edible animal. And then sometimes it's too difficult to do that. So you just don't eat the entire hind quarter.
Doesn't make sense because it's not a blood vessel. It has no really any real symbolism except it's there.
But this is the symbolism. It's to remember the story.
Mhm. But it's
Doesn't mean you have to like it.
no. If you cut it out, then you become crippled. Yeah, that could be it. But that's not relevant here.
Well, can you extract, Jerry, can a sciatic nerve be extracted? Can it
Of
be
course.
like,
Oh,
it
it
can
can?
be seen and
Oh yeah,
extracted?
it's very
And then-
very
When you
Wait,
get
from a
an ache down from your
Both.
hip,
both.
down all the way to
It's
your
one of the
ankle,
biggest nerves in
that's
the
your
body.
sciatic
No, I know,
nerve.
I know. it is.
Believe me, I
I just
know.
was wondering if like looking at a dead
I
animal.
mean, it is visible. It is possible to remove. But why would it even be symbolic for
Because
a fight with the angel? You know, it
Well,
doesn't.
I mean, you don't have to agree with it, but it is say pretty clearly on chapter 32, verse 33, that is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the socket of the hip, since Jacob's hip socket was wrenched at the thigh muscle.
Now,
It's in that area,
But it has nothing to do with the hip socket. It comes from the spine.
but
So-
they don't know that.
Yeah,
then.
but the
hip
other thing-
socket's
but
connected
the-
to the
the
spine.
Sephardim-
Hold on.
the
Whoa,
Sephardim-
time out. Yes and yes. Go for it.
The Sephardim
Mhm.
do remove it.
Well, where the cost of removing the nerve is
Right.
considered prohibitive. So it
And
depends
it
on, that
is.
depends on a variety of
And-
things.
It's
There
not a
are
big deal.
Sephardic and Italian, which are sort of different.
Mhm.
They eat that, and I have the most delicious. And,
Hashtag now we know.
I mean, what's better
No,
than
Well,
with-
hold on, this is not chaos. We have
No,
yes
no.
and then yes and then after
No,
that. Go for it.
Friends who were from Italy, from
Mhm.
Florence,
Mhm.
and they ate all these things, but they were Italian. I mean, and ultimately they had made Aliyah to Israel, so it's not like it was just whatever.
Uh-huh,
Is
uh-huh.
this the filet
Hold
mignon?
on, hold on.
I
We
don't
got,
know about that.
we got a lot of voices
Yeah.
around the
I
table and
just-
this can't be a cacophony. So you're finishing, then we have
Yes.
this, and then we have things after that. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, no, but the Sephardim eat differently. And they
Yes.
follow somewhat different traditions.
That's true.
And so that's the end of it.
Heck yeah. Yeshua. Yes.
Okay, just innocent, stupid question.
No, this is great.
Um,
This is a beautiful question.
Okay, so does this apply to chickens and turkeys?
Does this apply to chickens and
I was
turkeys?
wondering that too,
Not
'cause
that
we eat
I know
thighs.
of. Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yes, there might be, maybe there's something that I haven't heard of, but there's no, Yeah, no,
I
you
don't
can
think
eat
they
the
have
whole
sciatic
chicken.
nerve.
Yeah.
That's why. I
Yes, they
wondered.
do.
They do?
Yeah, no, but it's, does Torah
They
talk
also
about
chicken.
chickens and turkeys and eating birds?
Yes, Torah talks about chickens and turkeys and eating birds, but here's
Okay,
here's the
so-
thing. Everyone seems to really want kashrut to make sense. It does not make sense.
No,
No.
nothing
No,
symbolic
it doesn't,
makes
it
sense.
doesn't
Thank
make
you.
sense.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it will never make
Yes.
sense. It's not going to make sense. There are things about kashrut that I observe that I'm like, this is ridiculous. You know, it's like, it's kashrut is difficult.
Some of
It's
it makes
difficult.
sense, but some of it.
But the thing is, even when it seems to make sense to us, the actual reason why is because the Torah says so. And that's the thing that I think is very complicated, because people want to say things like, isn't it great that we have this tradition of not eating pig that keeps us healthy? But really, I mean, we can overlay our science on top of it, but it's the system that we just have to follow, which is really hard, because doesn't everyone want to eat what they want to eat? I mean, I know I do. Nom, nom, nom. It's difficult. Okay. Anyone else want to say something about this? Well, hold on. But you've said a lot of things on this so far. Anyone
No,
else
no,
first?
It's not on this.
Well, okay, hold on. Anyone else first?
Well, I just want to know what it is I'm not supposed to be eating. Can you tell me what part of the animal I'm not supposed to be eating? Because I'm not clear.
Lamb?
You
Like a
can't
lamb.
eat the sciatic nerve.
Can't eat leg of lamb?
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Right.
hold on. I'm the rabbi and I'm attempting to answer your halakhic question. So not that I am the foremost expert on halakha, but I definitely have spent more years learning about it in graduate school than anyone else around this table has. So I'm trying to answer your question. Okay, so I would say that this is correct. The text here, the sciatic nerve be extracted, you can't eat the sciatic nerve. But the thing is, because it's a process to move the sciatic nerve, this is how I relate to it as someone who does not slaughter animals. When you're making a salad and you're squeezing lemon on the top, it's actually kind of a lot of effort to make sure that not even one lemon seed gets in there, unless you have like a separate contraption that you're using. So are you going to go through all of the effort of making sure that no lemon seeds get in there? Or like if one slides in, it's like, you know, maybe I'll get that lemon and I'll be like,
What's this, what's
you
the
know.
deal with the lemon seed?
It's an example because I have never removed the sciatic nerve from an animal, but I have many times tried to get all the lemon seeds out of the salad.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Does it
yeah.
have lemon seeds?
No, that's not what I'm getting
It's a
at.
metaphor, you guys.
I'm trying to explain.
Oh.
Not necessarily
Oh.
succeeding. Have I answered your question?
No.
Please,
I mean, I
continue. Yeah,
really
yeah.
need to know
Mhm.
what parts I'm not supposed to be eating. I
This-
did not grow up kosher.
Okay,
And
this-
I don't know that.
the sciatic nerve.
But I don't, but you
So,
don't go to a butcher and say, I want that.
Mhm.
Does it have a sciatic nerve?
well,
What-
see,
what
I
pieces?
appreciate your question. So this is very technical. So like I said, I've spent more time learning about this in graduate school than anyone else around the table. But if someone gave me a cow and a sharp object, I would not be able to produce kosher meat. That's a whole other level of training. So and what it makes me think of is like, you know, I can take a pen and write notes on a page, but that's a whole other level of training to write a Sefer Torah. So this is why we have a kosher butcher,
No, I understand.
right?
Did you have leg of lamb growing up?
I did.
Kosher?
I think so, because my grandmother made it like whenever we visited. That was the Saturday night dinner.
But it's
And
not
she
how you
was-
make it, it's purchasing
No,
it from
no,
a
I know.
kosher
I'm
butcher.
pretty sure
Oh,
she did.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure she did.
So, but a kosher butcher wouldn't have
Wouldn't
that
have
part
that.
of
They
it.
wouldn't have
No, we have lamb chops.
But there
You
are
have lamb
also,
chops.
but so we've already talked about also how there are different
They just
customs
don't
around
exist
kosher
now.
slaughter. So it is true, and I think that we've you know proven this through our conversation, that if you go to a kosher butcher in Italy, you might get something different than a kosher butcher in Pico Robertson,
Okay.
because there are different customs.
I mean, I have no intention of eating leg of lamb. I'm just curious. Okay, thank you.
Big lamb parmesan. to
One
that.
of the most delicious things to eat is.
You don't have to
lamb.
slaughter the eggplant. You can just slice.
Sounds
Actually,
good.
can we come
Okay.
over? I mean,
Is that, are we
He's
good?
making spaghetti with meat sauce tonight. That's what he's.
I just want to say,
Yes,
Oh,
please.
if you're the best in the West,
No sciatic.
you'll be least in
Or no.
the East.
Oh, all right. We like that. Okay, okay.
Jerry?
If you're best in the West, then you're least in the
Least in the
East.
East, so, no, you have to finish the thought.
Shkoach, shkoach. Okay, anything else on this before we move on?
What about
Remember,
brain?
kashrut doesn't make sense.
What about brain? Is it kosher?
Grain, I'm pretty sure grain is not kosher.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, it is.
It
My
is.
grandmother,
Because
Yeah.
lunch,
my
Lunch is
grandmother
kosher.
made grains a
Uh-huh,
lot.
yeah.
because it
Your
was
grandmother
and
made
sweet meat.
Sweetbreads.
Interesting,
And it was
interesting.
kosher.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
She
well,
only
so this
got,
is
she only went to a kosher butcher.
fair
Went to the
enough.
butcher.
I have never seen
about the
sweetbreads
blood?
at a kosher butcher,
blood.
but
Oh, I don't know
let's-
about sweetbreads. This is
yeah.
great.
Sweetbread is
grain
grain.
and
Sweetbread is
sweetbread are the
grain.
same thing.
I'm pretty
No.
sure.
No,
Grain.
no,
Grain.
not
Sweetbreads are
necessarily.
pituitary.
It's pancreas.
Not
Pancreas.
pituitary,
Lovely.
the, I'm ill.
I mean, maybe it's
Tongue.
becoming
Sweetbreads
evident through
are
this
delicious.
conversation
Tongue
that
is
I
kosher.
am not the biggest
love
meat
tongue.
eater. I've spent chunks of my life not eating meat at all. So I am, you know, when it
I
comes
love
to
all
like
those organs.
the history of sweet, and I also didn't grow up eating only kosher meat, so I might be missing some things here, but that's why we go to a kosher butcher. That's why we have to, you know, employ all of these different kinds of Jewish professionals to fully live a halachic life. Like back to, you know, other examples, like a Sefer Torah, I couldn't write a Sefer Torah. So I need to trust someone else to know the expertise on that to be able to perform it. Now, the other thing is that there are also trends in cuisine over time, so that perhaps the food that you grew up eating isn't really sold in this
I
area right
never had
now.
grains, but my mother and my aunt and all.
The food that someone you're related to grew up eating in a different time might not be
Some people
available in
miss
this place and time.
I love it.
Okay.
I disagree. You're very intelligent.
Yes.
You have tons of brains.
Sometimes people have to eat the food that is available in their area.
That's true.
So
Yes.
I think people who
My
live by the
mother grew
sea
up
and,
eating-
you know, had to eat lobster,
Mhm.
crab, I don't know.
Mm.
No, you would
No.
just be veggie.
Veggie. No, I mean,
Veg.
there are other fish, but sometimes, you know, if there's nothing else to eat.
Not if
Well,
you're
you know,
kosher.
it's I
Yeah,
think
it's
that
funny.
kashrut is about place and time, and it's also about community. There are some, how are these people related to me? Like cousins by marriage, first cousins by marriage, who are very Orthodox. And it's like, the way that they do stuff is that they really, they keep kosher, like, but a lot of people keep kosher, but they only eat like food that, or restaurants that are like approved by their community, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not like, so if I bring kosher food with a hechsher on it, they won't necessarily eat it
Yes.
because of
Mhm.
any other circumstances. And there have been a couple of different family events, and I'm sure that many people can relate to this through their own experience, where it's like the food is kosher, but there are there are people attending the event that they don't know them. Maybe people attending the event aren't necessarily Jewish. Maybe they, you know, their rabbi has not personally met the supervising rabbi who prepared the food. Maybe there are, I don't know I don't even know the list of possible things. But when it comes to kashrut, there are so many different sub-customs. It causes, I think, as evidenced by this conversation, a lot of disagreement. And because it's food, and food is very, you know, it's very personal, it's very intimate, it's very delicious. People like take these disagreements and they get very upset, you know. And so I think that when it comes to kashrut, it's important to be mindful, gentle, respectful, and I think like a little bit more patient about it than we otherwise would with anything else, right? Because it's just things can get inflamed very quickly. Yes.
I have a question. It's sort of tangential.
Okay.
When
Oh
somebody,
my gosh, it's 10:20. Okay.
when somebody makes bread,
Yes.
you're supposed to take a piece of the dough. What on earth does that mean, and how do you take it? I mean, you're supposed to burn it? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. It's so yes, when you part of making kosher challah is, well, the first thing is that it has to be a certain volume of flour, or volume of dough. And I don't know what that number is off the top of my head. I don't do a lot of bread baking these days. So when you make the challah, if it's a certain amount of dough, then you separate a certain amount of dough, and yes, you burn it. You don't eat it, because you know this isn't in the book of Genesis, but later on. So let's keep this brief because we are focusing this class on the book of Genesis. That there was the showbread in the
Right.
temple, so they had this bread that was just for display, and I think that the Levites ended up eating it, kind of stale, whatever. But so that's why we separate the challah, because for the piece that we didn't eat ourselves, that we gave to the priest in the temple.
Thank you. I've always wondered about this.
No,
Should be an end
we're answering
piece.
questions left and right.
Should be an end.
Well, it's kind of its own loaf. Yeah, but you can take it off the end of the, okay, so let's see, here we go. So now from the ridiculous to the sublime, or the sublime to the ridiculous, I'm not really sure which. Let's skip ahead to the incident with Dina. So this is the beginning of chapter 34, page 206 in the Eitz Chaim, or chapter 34, verse 1. So before we jump into this story a little bit more, has anyone besides me read The Red Tent by Anita Diamond? Okay, yeah. So
A
we
long
have
time
people who
ago.
are familiar with this book. And so basically it's a very creative midrash on the story. When we read the story, well, I really like the way that our commentary, the below the line commentary, the creative interpretive commentary phrases it. This is on page 206, the kind of the last sentence in the Eitz Chaim. Characteristically, the narrative of the rape of Dina describes the actions of men, but never tells us what Dina thought, nor how she felt about what happened. So in the what is clear in the story is that Dina sleeps with someone who she shouldn't be sleeping with. This is someone who was not a nice Jewish boy, and she's not married to him. So this is a big problem. And however the incident came about, whether she was raped, as the story seems to imply, whether she was not raped, as Anita Diamond implies in The Red Tent, this sexual relationship was not sanctioned by the community. She was doing the wrong thing in the eyes of the community by hanging out with this young man and having a great time. So her brothers end up avenging the situation in a pretty harsh fashion, because they have dishonored the man, the young man Shem has dishonored their sister Dina by the sexual relationship. So we don't know what Dina thought about what happened. We don't know how she felt about what happened, but it is definitely true that they had an intimate moment. Okay, now Dina, the daughter of whom Leah had born to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. That's chapter 34, verse 1. Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, chief of the country, saw her and took her and lay with her by force. By force. So I think that and so back to the story, The Red Tent, I think that at least for my reading of The Red Tent, it kind of informs how sometimes when you read a midrash, sometimes you read a creative interpretation on what's going on in the Torah, it changes your understanding of the story so much that you don't really see it the same way again. So lay with her by force, that seems pretty direct. But this midrash, this interpretive story, which is like, no, it wasn't by force. She actually wanted to have a sexual relationship with him. That's different than what the Torah says. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I think that the midrash is so brilliant because it picks up on the fact that we never hear from her. That they
all the different translations.
Oh, great question. Yes. So chapter 34, verse 2. Let's have some different translations. The JPS Tanakh is the same translation.
The altar says, lay with her and abused her.
Lay with her and abused her.
Oh,
so I think that translation is very helpful to this conversation, because like abused in whose opinion, right? So it's so like, because she had the sexual relationship, her status as a woman was forever diminished. So that could be a type of abuse, or but just because people do things they shouldn't doesn't mean they feel bad about it at the time necessarily. And I'm certainly not trying to make any statements about how rape isn't real. Rape is definitely real, but I think it's I keep saying, like, I'm so compelled by this midrash, The Red Tent, because we hear the story about Dina only from the perspective of the authors who are men, and the vengeance by her brothers.
Right.
And we never hear from her again.
It still doesn't say, and
That's
they had
correct.
relations.
This
He lay with her.
Yeah,
or
this
something.
translation, the Stone translation says, saw her, he took her, lay with her, and violated her.
Right.
The next line says he became deeply attached to Dina.
See, that's
after.
the
That's after.
right. So it's like, so violated her in her opinion or in her father's opinion.
Whose opinion is it?
Whose opinion is it? And
It's
that
the author's opinion.
It's the author's opinion. Yes. And then we go back to the song. JNENPNG wrote the BIBLE. We remember that from before?
No.
No, the historical, okay, so some of us remember this from before. So the idea is that when we use the documentary hypothesis, when you use academic tools of literary analysis to understand the Torah.
Violated her because they weren't married, because we have plenty of other sexual consummations where they lay with her,
Mhm.
but we have unmarried consummations where they just lay together.
I am not sure, but let's call our attention back here to some questionable things that in the sexual behavior of Abraham and Sarah, and also Isaac and Rebecca, the incidents where the man in the marriage is like, well, we're in kind of a sticky political situation, so why don't you, my lovely bride, sleep with this person and everything will be better. And that was like, well, that was okay, or something. Yes.
So I always go back to what is the purpose of the story?
Ooh.
And
Mhm.
to me, it's has almost very little to do with Dina.
Yes. So
And-
say more.
I think that you can belabor whether or not she was an eager participant or whatever,
Mhm.
but the reason for the inclusion is based on the aftermath. They needed an explanation for what the brothers did.
Awesome. So we love this. Let's go look at what the brothers did because they definitely did things. Okay, so let's just kind of read some more. Okay. So chapter 34, verse 3. Being strongly drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, and in love with the maiden, he spoke to the maiden tenderly. So Shechem said to his father Hamor, get me this girl as a wife. Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but since his sons were in the field with his cattle, Jacob kept silent until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor came out to Jacob to speak to him. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons, having heard the news, came in from the field. The men were distressed and very angry because he had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing not to be done. And Hamor spoke with them, saying, my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us and take your daughters for yourselves. You'll dwell among us and the land will be open before you. Settle, move about, and acquire holdings in it. Then Shechem said to her father and brothers, do me this favor and I'll pay whatever you tell me. Ask of me a bride price ever so high as well as gifts, and I will pay what you tell me. Only give me the maiden for a wife. Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor, speaking with guile because he had defiled their sister Dinah, and said to them, we can't do this thing to give our sister to a man who's uncircumcised, for that's a disgrace among us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become like us, in that every male among you is circumcised. No big deal. Then we will give our daughters to you and take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell among you and become as one kindred. But if you will not listen to us and become circumcised, we'll take our daughter and go. Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem. And the youth lost no time in doing the thing, for he wanted Jacob's daughter. The thing. I mean, let's look at some. Let's get some Hebrew. V'lo acher hana'ar la'asot hadavar. Yeah, the thing. That's that thing. The operation. For he wanted Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most respected in his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the public place of their town and spoke to their fellow townsmen, saying, these people are our friends. Let them settle in the land and move about in it, for the land is large enough for them. We will take their daughters to ourselves as wives and give our daughters to them. But only on this condition will the men agree with us to dwell among us and be as one kindred, that all our males become circumcised as they are circumcised. Their cattle and substance and all their beasts will be ours if we only agree to their terms, so that they will settle among us. All who went out of the gate of his town heeded Hamor and his son Shechem, and all males, all those who went out of the gate of his town were circumcised. On the third day, when they were in pain, Shimon and Levi, two of Jacob's sons, brothers of Dinah, took each his sword, came upon the city unmolested, and slew all the males. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword, took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went away. The other sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the town, because their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and asses, all that was inside the town and outside, all their wealth, all their children and their wives, all that was in the houses, they took as captives and booty. Jacob said to Shimon and Levi, you've brought trouble on me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My men are few in number, so that if they unite against me and attack me, I and my house will be destroyed. But they answered, should our sister be treated like a whore?
That's pretty strong language.
It's true. So this is the aftermath.
Seems like male arrogance.
And then when
Okay,
he
seems
gives
like
the
male arrogance.
blessings, when he's dying.
This is, so you're
he
talking about
comes back
later.
way future,
Hmm.
when he's dying, this comes back to sort of bite them.
Yasher Koach, you're absolutely right. This incident with Shimon and Levi gets remembered by Jacob. It's like, oh God, you caused me this problem, this huge problem back in the day. Oh, I might forgive, but I'm not going to forget.
There's a-
Yes.
There's an oversized letter in the last sentence.
Yes.
Yes. So is that the word for,
Yes. Zonah,
Yeah.
Isha Zonah is a whore.
mhm,
A woman who is not behaving sexually in an appropriate fashion.
mhm,
She's sleeping with the wrong people.
mhm.
Yes.
I have a question, actually goes back to the beginning of the story. Verse
Amazing.
7,
Verse
which is
7.
top of page 208.
Yes.
And the line says, because he had committed an outrage in Israel
Hmm.
by lying with Jacob's daughter. Why do you need in Israel? Is that a way of saying, in a sense, that the other, they don't have our morals, they're not civilized, we should not be dealing with them?
Exactly.
And make the whole story about prohibition about intermarriage as opposed to going out and killing your neighbors.
There you go. Absolutely. I think that there kind of was that as well. So it's and I appreciate the topics that have come up, about what's the aftermath, what are the societal repercussions, but also this issue of intermarriage, because that's something that is very close to the Jewish community in our place in our day. And this story is definitely about that. Someone saying, a neighboring tribe. Oh, and Arnie's got his hand. So Arnie, you're up next. Hold on one second. So one tribe is saying like, hey, let's unite. This is going to be great. And in Israel because now with and when was I going to talk about this? Oh, we've kind of already gone past it. It's okay. So right now, so we have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are the patriarchs. And so, but once we go, so Jacob is the last of the patriarchs because all of the children become part of the Jewish tribe. So now we have this idea of Israel because we have these 12 sons and we have this tribe. It's not just like, oh, there are 2 sons and here's the favored one and here's the not favored one. So yes, so now that there's like a large family, a community, a tribe, we're going to stick with each other and we're not going to just, unite our family with any other family.
I think this answers your question, why this story? Because I think the story is that answer, is that we don't mix with our tribes with others.
And I think that even maybe it's like, well, we do, and when we do, it's always a little bit of an issue. Arnie.
Good morning, everybody. Shavua Tov.
Morning. Boker Tov.
The fact that the actions, the only reaction of Jacob to this was that he was concerned about being made odious in the eyes of the neighbors. I made an association recently with what's going, and I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but what's going on now in Israel. The fact that that we were violated and our response, rightfully or not, has made Israel odious in the eyes of Israel's neighbors.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting comparison, and perhaps grounds for some kind of discussion.
Oh, I love that. Yasher Koach, and it's like
Yes.
I mean, all of what we've said this morning, but I think that this particular comment is such a great example of why it's so important to study Torah together. I think that, like, obviously a lot of us were at Shabbat services yesterday. Davening is great, like giving a sermon is great, but learning and interacting in this way is also great. And it's special and it's an irreplaceable part of Jewish spirituality. And that's why I love doing this with all of you so much. So, but I mean, like, okay, back to what you just said. Yeah. And so, like, okay, I'm just, so, okay, chapter 34, verses 30 and 31. Let's just read this one more time. So Jacob said to Shimon and Levi, you've brought trouble on me, making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My men are few in number, so that if they unite against me and attack me, I and my house will be destroyed. Existential threat, right? Existential threat to the house. Like there's a, not just an us and them, but like how much, how many troops on this side, how many troops on that side. We have to be strategic about how we go into conflict, because like, it's not, anytime a conflict starts, the outcome is never guaranteed. But they answered, should our sister be treated like a whore? There are things that happen to us that we have to fight back, even if, no matter what. Yes.
If we go back to line 26,
Amazing.
they took Dinah out of Shechem's house.
Right.
Now, she had been living with this man, I'm assuming.
That's kind of the thing. Just like we go back to the Vianeha, however we're translating that, lay with her and abused her, lay with her by force, something like that. So it's like, okay, on that one side, it's like, it seems like there was some sort of, like, here's the inappropriate part, whether it was force or we could split hair, like whatever, but he's strongly drawn to her. He's in love with her. She's in his house. Is she kept captive in his house? Like, well, we don't know about that. Maybe that's true.
And there's a tradition. We were in Central Asia, and I can't remember which country it was, where women are kidnapped.
Kyrgyzstan.
It's a Kyrgyzstan, and they're taken. If somebody wants a particular woman, a group will kidnap her and move her to the house of the man, and the women in the house, and this is current, and it still happens instead of being on
Yes,
animals,
Turkmens.
whichever one it was, they still do this. And the women in the family try to browbeat her and say, you really should stay with us. And at the end of, I don't know how much time, if she really is miserable, she can leave. But this tradition, I mean, the fact,
It's
this is what's,
symbolic and everyone goes through.
yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon still.
Interesting.
So I
I'm
wonder if
wondering,
she's already living with them, not to negate any, the
Right.
repercussions.
Well, let's
but-
see. Is there any
It's verse 26.
26? Do we have any commentary? Does anyone in any translation or edition that they have?
The entire affair began with Dinah going out and being taken. It concludes with the same two Hebrew verbs, but in reverse order. As far as two Hebrew verbs, as far as Shimon and Levi are concerned, their account with Shechem is settled. They take no part in the plunder of the city. So they're only interested in revenge on the father and the son. And the other brothers seize the opportunity to pillage, but they do not destroy the city.
Right. So we don't have anything directly in that commentary about why she's in his house and what's going on with that. Yes, go ahead.
Have something.
Please, yeah.
Meyer Sternberg, 1985. I don't know if that makes sense. Shrewdly notes that this is a shocking revelation. This is verse 26. Shrewdly notes that this is a shocking revelation just before the end of the story. We might have imagined that Shechem was petitioning in good faith for Dinah's hand. Now it emerges that he has been holding her captive in his house after having raped her. So it's pretty, I don't know where, it seems pretty definitive. I'm not sure why it's so definitive.
Right.
That's what it is.
Well, it's but so that's another perspective, right? And the red tent isn't something that appears in, but the red tent is very definitive in its perspective as well. But I think that that's what Midrash is all about, is taking the story and saying, or even because Midrash is a type of commentary, taking a story and saying like, huh, this doesn't make sense. So how can we add to it to make it make sense? And I think that that's definitely a valid, not the only valid way of explaining it, but a valid way of explaining it. Yeah, yeah.
Which goes back to Arnie's analogy with what's happening today in the hostages. I mean, directly, because if she was a hostage and they basically the brothers needed to get her out,
Right,
it's so the same thing applies.
right.
But what I always think of is lack of compassion on God's part, if you will. But he's not really a figure in this story.
Right. We do have, I mean, even chapter 35, verse 1, eventually we'll move on a little bit because we have a little bit more parsha, but we don't have to move on quite yet. That God does appear as a character, if you will, in this parsha, but not in this episode.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the other episode where God does not appear is in Esther.
That is another one. Yes.
And there's
yes.
intermarriage there too.
And a slaughter at the end.
And a slaughter at the end.
Ah,
where Shakespeare-
interesting.
That's why.
Shakespeare got it.
Well, so I like,
Or
let's,
gets killed.
I'm just,
don't know.
okay, taking a note of the
Could be
time, figuring out how we're
dissertation
gonna wrap this up. So let's talk about intermarriage. Just kind of a very casual discussion in any sort of Jewish situation. Let's talk about intermarriage.
So I'll bring up.
Yes, and then yes, this is great.
Don't
Go for it.
No, my sister married a non-Jew who's got some issues of his own, but he won't attend a Seder. And so now she won't.
Oh.
I know, and I
That's
think
okay.
she should,
Yes.
but that's besides the point.
I'm okay with it.
I can't.
But it's sad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I don't know, but I don't know, I mean, I'm sure there are Jewish people who don't want to sit at a Seder
Sure,
either. And
absolutely.
ours are not the 4-hour Seders that you grew up with. But
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Yeah.
No, Seder is
But your
the one
faith-
holiday that most Jews attend. It's the,
Correct. And
It's
but
the
even
most-
then, there are some Jews who won't, right?
So
well, no, but
Obviously.
she won't, because so when you're asking about intermarriage, I don't know.
So
I have
this
a
is
problem with it.
what, there you go. So this is one of the many concerns about intermarriage, that the Jew who intermarries with the non-Jew will be pulled away from Judaism,
Yeah.
which doesn't always happen, but it does sometimes happen. I think it is always a concern, whether or not it always happens. Yes.
Well, here's my experience with my family. So both my sons actually married women who aren't Jewish. My older son was so interesting when he, if you don't mind indulging me for a couple minutes. When he was dating, well, first of all, they clicked a lot on the first date. So he tells her on the second date, "Look, before this goes any further, I'm Jewish. I realize you aren't. I don't care what you are, but my children must be raised Jewish." And she said, "I'm totally okay with that." And for a while, she even considered converting. She never did. Okay. But the children have been going to Hebrew school and they went to Jewish preschool, and I'll get into a little more of that. But what was the thing about my father-in-law? So my father-in-law was fairly observant. And so when Jeffrey, my son, was getting serious before he got married, because I remember my father-in-law talking about a good friend in Santa Rosa, was actually one of the couples that founded the Conservative Temple there, an older couple, and they had disowned their son because he married a non-Jew.
Yeah.
And my father-in-law used to talk like in awe, like this was a good thing, like the appropriate thing.
Right,
Okay, so
right.
my father-in-law was in the hospital. He and I were alone, and I said, "Dad, Jeff is getting serious with Meredith, and I just want, she's not Jewish, and I just want to see how you're feeling about it. And his feelings had changed over time
Wow.
because one of his sons had a very bad first marriage with a Jewish woman and a good marriage with a non-Jewish woman. He says, look, his happiness is all that matters.
Wow.
And I want to go to the children because there's an interesting thing in the gray. Thing
Oh,
on
yeah.
209.
Okay, perfect.
So the children, there's a boy and girl, my grandchildren. The boy was circumcised by a pediatric urologist who was Jewish and said Hebrew prayers, but not the naming.
Oh,
Okay?
interesting. Okay.
I know, it was
Uh-huh.
weird. Well, my daughter-in-law is a nurse, so she knew this man.
Uh-huh.
Then, when the kids were like 4 and 2, my son converted them to Judaism. See, I didn't know about any of this. Okay.
It
So
gets
they went to
technical.
a
Yeah.
mikveh.
Yeah.
He
Mhm.
took them into the mikveh, and we had a naming ceremony the next day at the synagogue there
Oh.
for both children.
Mhm.
But here on the bottom of 209,
Mhm.
so now I'm like thinking, oh, was he circumcised, the last sentence, medically, was a drop of blood drawn from the same site?
Right.
Whoa, I never heard of this.
Oh, I have.
When
yeah,
I-
have.
So,
Yeah.
like, was that considered just a medical, I mean, I know you can't answer this, but was that just a medical circumcision?
This
That he
actually is a
converted
question
Hebrew
I am able to answer, like, which usually how like a question is like, let me do some research and I'll email you later. But this is something that comes up a lot, these status situations, these status issues. So there's a concept of lahatchila and b'diavad. There's in American law, there are like Latin terms, so it's from the outset versus after the fact.
Okay.
So this is definitely an after the fact situation. Definitely, like there was a circumcision with Hebrew prayers. They went to mikveh.
Yeah.
Also, that the children are young. Like Hatzafat Dambrit is something that when you're talking about an adult male who is converting to Judaism, then it's like, well, yes, you unless there's some sort of extenuating circumstance, which there very well might be. Yes, that is a necessary part of it. But when you have children, that's a different situation. I actually met a family just a couple of months ago, just at their baiting for the conversion, and so the dad was Jewish, the mom was converting, and there were 2 kids, a son and a daughter. And so the conversion, when I was there, it was for the mom and the daughter, but the son couldn't convert yet because the son wasn't circumcised. And so it's like, oh boy, it's like that was that was the decision that they made when the kids were born, but now, and the kid was like 10, 12. And so it's like, well, what do you do now? And so it's this, when I would talk, I was in my first year of being a rabbi, I was working in Seattle and dealing with some couples teaching a class for some couples who were in a conversion process. And so whenever we got to this, I was always like, awkward topic, awkward topic. Cause yes, you do, that's it. That's what you do. As a female rabbi, I do not do that, but male rabbis do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what did this family do? Was the child circumcised ultimately?
Well, I don't know yet. This is I think they're going to have to find some way to work that out.
They're waiting
Yeah.
until he's 13.
No, but
Boy, yeah, I'm not sure.
When the Muslims do it, they
Yeah.
circumcise at
13,
13.
yeah.
I can't say I
Yes,
know that
yes,
much
yes,
about
yes.
Muslim circumcision.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
They
But also-
circumcise at 13.
also, any circumcision will draw blood. So,
Well, yes,
That's what I'm
yeah.
saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
No,
not
I
an
mean,
issue.
I'm not that seriously
Yeah.
worried, but I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah.
And I was so fascinated by the process that my son and daughter-in-law went through. I give them so much, credit for
Absolutely.
doing all that. I mean,
Yeah.
my daughter-in-law's Hebrew is better than mine.
See, and I think that these 2 stories perfectly illustrate why this is so complicated, because every family and every couple is different and it turns out a different way. But I think that the 2 broad camps are like the partner who starts out not Jewish is either converts or is incredibly instrumental in the family having a Jewish life,
Yes.
which
she
happens
is.
a lot, which is crazy to me. I would have, my husband teaches B'nai Mitzvah students. And so the number of times I've seen the non-Jewish parent making sure that the student practices, it's like,
That's
it blows my
daughter-in-law.
mind,
Yeah, that's my daughter-in-law, yeah.
So that's the one thing. And then the other thing is that, the Jew marries the non-Jew and then they stop going to Seder,
Yeah.
so it's complicated. and it's about emotional.
It's very interesting.
Okay, we could talk about this for a long time. Maybe we'll talk about this more in a different class, but for now, let's turn to, hold on, let me get the chapter and verse. Oh, okay, these next couple things we might have to touch on a little bit more quickly, just in the interest of time. But so Genesis chapter 35, verse 9 through 12, let's read that. So this is Jacob is having another adventure, and God appears again to Jacob on his arrival from John Aram, and God blesses Jacob. God said to him, "You whose name is Jacob, you shall be called Jacob no more, but Israel shall be your name." Thus God named him Israel. And God said to him, "I am El Shaddai, be fertile and increase. A nation, indeed, as an assembly of nations shall descend from you. Kings shall issue from your loins. The land that I assigned to Abraham and Isaac, I assign to you, and to your offspring to come will I assign the land." So this is the second time in the same parsha that Jacob gets the name Israel. And what's interesting is that like when when Avram becomes Avraham, when Abram becomes Abraham, and when Sarai becomes Sarah, their names are changed. But this is a little bit different. It's not true that he's called Jacob no more for the rest of his life as recorded in the Torah. He's called interchangeably Jacob and Israel, which is confusing, but okay.
Is that because of different authors? Or is
I don't think so. I think that, I mean, even
when God
so-
is angry with him, he's Jacob?
I actually.
Like your mother calls you with your middle name.
Yep.
When she's, you know, what would it be?
Israel.
Jane Ellen. You know, this is your-
But I mean, so I haven't heard an interpretation that's systematic, but look at this. So we read verses 9 through 12, and then so let's read 13 and 14. God parted from at the spot where he had spoken to him, and Jacob set up a pillar at the site where God had spoken to him, a pillar of stone, and he offered libation on it and poured oil upon it. One more verse, Jacob gave the site where God had spoken to him the name of Bethel. So yes, it is
God has a
confusing.
short memory.
Yeah.
And then Israel turned
That's the
on.
explanation. God has a short memory. I love that.
That's a good midrash.
It's a great midrash. Okay, so speaking of, sorry to move us along so fast here, but we're getting close to the end. I want to point out, okay, so chapter 35, let's look at verses 22 through 26. So we have this like little aside, and so now we have the Jacob going by the name Israel. While Israel stayed in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel found out. This was a great story. It's like the one sentence. It's not even a one sentence story. It's half a sentence story because the sentence goes on after that. But when I was teaching the 9th graders last year, oh, we had a lot of conversation about this one. Yes. So we, and I guess we were, with the 9th graders, we were more in the conversation, and we talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but we have like Team Rachel and Team Leah, and which team can have the most kids. and so Reuben and Bilhah are on opposing teams. So basically, because Reuben is a son of Leah, and Bilhah is on Team Rachel. So it's a power grab.
And Dinah is daughter of Leah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
So
Yeah.
that-
Absolutely. So talking about the two teams, right? Right. And Team Leah, even though it's the larger team with the more kids, it's not the favorite team because Rachel is the favorite wife. So when Dinah is, dishonoring Team Leah, the brothers are already, and I appreciate this note that the brothers are already kind of in a place of vulnerability because Joseph is the favorite, and so it's like another thing to mess up our team. Yeah. Boy.
Need better t-shirts.
Better t-shirts next time. Okay, and then so let's look at the, oh my gosh, actually we have to go back because something important just happened in the parsha that we almost blew past. We should not do that. Chapter 35 verse 16, and we'll probably close mostly on this story. They set out from Bethel, but when they were still some distance short of Ephrath, Rachel was in childbirth and she had hard labor. When her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Have no fear, it's another boy for you." But as she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named him Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. Thus Rachel died. She was buried on the road to Ephrat, now Bethlehem. Over her grave, Jacob set up a pillar. It is the pillar at Rachel's grave to this day. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. So this is sad. The favorite wife dies in childbirth. Benjamin never gets to meet his mom. Not really. So this is sad, so let's look at commentary number 19 below the line. If we're in the 8th time, Rachel wants to name the child Ben-Oni, child of pain, or according to Maimonides, child of mourning. Either way, it's not the most positive of names. Jacob overrules her deathbed wish and names him Benjamin, child of strength, or perhaps child of long life. So Yamin, it means the right hand, which is associated with all positive things. So Rachel wants to be like, with the name, and Jacob's like, no, we need to have a strong name. He wants the child to remind him of Rachel's strength and courage, not of her pain and death, and does not want Benjamin to grow up feeling responsible for his mother's death. Very sensitive. Very sensitive. So this is a sad moment. And going back to the section that we were just reading about Reuben laying with Bilhah, now the sons of Jacob were 12 in number. So now with the birth of Benjamin, now we have all 12 tribes. So let's review here the sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Shimon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, all the sons of Leah, the sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. So obviously Team Leah is bigger than Team Rachel. And then each handmaid contributes 2 sons to the team. So it doesn't really change the balance that much. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maid, Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram. So now by the end of the Parsha, we have all 12 tribes. Then we have Isaac dying, so let's read this too. And Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre at Kiryat Arba, now Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Isaac was 180 years old when he breathed his last and died. He was gathered to his kin in ripe old age, and he was buried by his sons Esau and Jacob. So, new generational shift. Yes, please.
I think it's really strange that we have this complete switching of Israel, Jacob, Israel, Jacob, Israel, Jacob.
Yeah, it is confusing. Why would God say this is your? I mean,
this is beyond the different authors, because it's like every sentence we're interchanging.
Right. Exactly.
Why is that?
It's so that's a good question.
Yeah.
I haven't heard one interpretation that's like, and this is why it is.
No.
You know, I've definitely heard a lot of.
Strange.
It is very strange. Yeah, I've heard a lot of times of that, like we're noting right now. Of okay, he gets the new name, and then he's called by the old name one sentence later.
And back and forth and back and forth.
And then back and forth. But so, if anyone wants to have optional homework, you can find an interpretation for next time. And if not, I'm sure we'll learn these verses again. Okay, so it's 10:59. So before we stop, let's look at chapter 36, which is the last part of the Parsha, the line of Esav. So now we have a real changing of the guard. We have all 12 sons are now born to Jacob. We have Rachel dying. We have, in childbirth, very sad. We have Isaac dying of old age. And now in our next Parsha, our next class will be not next week, but the week after that, the 14th, we'll pick up really with the Joseph story, which gets very, very exciting with lots of back and forth and this and that. But before that, we have the line of Esav, which is, a cousin of our Jewish tribe. So the line of Esav, that is Edom. Esav took his wives from the Canaanite women. They went to another land because of his brother Jacob. We're kind of just scanning through chapter 36 here. The names of Esav's sons, the clans of the children of Esav, more names and genealogies. We've got the kings of the land of Edom, verse 31. And then the names of the clans of Esav to close out the Parsha. So, and now it's 11 o'clock, and that is pretty much that. So any closing questions, burning desires? Yes.
Korach was mentioned.
Yes.
So is that
which verse do we have right there?
it's verse 5.
Chapter 36, verse 5?
Yeah.
Yes. Oholiva ma Yalda et Yeush vet Yalam vet Korach. Yes. So this might be the first appearance of the name Korach in the Torah. Definitely, we have another guy named Korach who shows up in the book of Bamidbar, which is a whole
Much later.
incident. Yes, but yes, it is the same name, spelled the same way.
Okay,
It is the same. I think spelled the same way.
yeah, it is,
I think so. Yeah. Yes, Korach.
yes.
Any other notes, questions, comments, concerns?
This has to be a very difficult parsha to read.
Oh, all the names. Oh my gosh, I love a good roll call. Yeah, it's like it's super fun. My favorite ones are really at the book of Bamidbar,
Yes.
you know, with all the names of the tribes and things like that. But yes, it's not. I feel like these names are there are also some names or some some titles like sergeant or whatever that appear that are like borrowed from Persian language in the book of Esther. We've got some tongue twisters, but yes, the names are always a lot of fun to read.
On there's a footnote on page 217.
Love it.
For, no, well, I mean, in the text, there's 16 for Korach, but then there is no footnote on the page. And on the following page, is there? Am I not seeing it? Do you see what I mean?
So
It goes
no,
from
just
50,
the-
it goes,
the verse number.
oh, it's just no, but they always coordinate.
What number?
Don't they coordinate with
What number
footnotes?
is on that?
I'm wrong.
There, yeah. So so there is the verse numbered 16 that starts with Korach in the translation, and there is no footnote for that. There's all the verses are numbered, but not every number has a
Okay,
footnote
okay,
associated
okay.
with it.
Okay.
But that's a good question, because how to decode all these things
You're
is
right,
not
you're right,
not
you're right.
straightforward. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks everyone for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Very
Dr.
much.
Great learning as always. Thanks
Yeah,
for joining
yeah,
us
that's what I-
virtually
that's
as
what-
well as
Yeah, I
in
saw
person.
that.
And we will pick our learning up
It's
again
just another
in 2
guy who
weeks
made
on
fun.
April
It's like
14th.
Good
Have a
night.
great 2
Margie,
weeks.
Margie.
Thanks
you know.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.